start expressing love in their love language. You've apologized to them, now start loving them. And I'm telling you, if they don't turn around in 6 months, you can look God in the face, you can look yourself in the mirror and know you've done the most powerful thing you could do to try to stimulate growth in your marriage.
Gary, welcome to Focus. You're remote today because airlines couldn't get you here, but we miss you physically, but we're so glad you're joining us remotely.
Well, thank you. I'm glad it worked out and looking forward to our time together.
Yeah. I mean, how long have you and your wife been married now?
63 years.
Oh, wow.
She says that's impossible. She's only 49.
That sounds like my mom. She was 49 for like 50 years. But no, that's awesome. You do have a PhD. I was going to say you got a PhD in marriage. 63, that's a good run.
Yes, we're very excited. You know, I remember the early days, though, Jim, when I wasn't sure what was going to happen. You know, we had a lot of negative feelings, and we didn't know how to solve conflicts, and we argued a lot. And I think God let us go through those early stages because of what He wanted to do in my life.
Sure.
And He gave me empathy for people. You know, when they sit in my office and say, "We're just too different. This is just not working." You know, I can identify with that. Mm-hmm. So God uses even the hard times in making us and also in using us.
Oh, especially that. But I mean, the fact that you've gone through, those cycles of marriage, like I was talking about, once you get a certain maturity, things aren't as tense, I think. I mean, hopefully you're learning how to deflate and not escalate conflict, etc. I mean, you should be getting A's and B's at this stage, not D's and F's. But just to get the audience involved in your early marriage, we do want to talk about your D's and your F's. Sorry about that. But you mentioned that when you first got married, those expectations, and the book talks about this, the expectations that you had. This is so common to every couple. You go into marriage thinking, we're so much in love, we're so much alike, this is going to be wonderful. And then at some point, 6 months, 6 days, 6 years into that wonderful bliss, something explodes. What typically is the cause of that marital explosion?
I think it's because we come down off that high. I was always told when I was growing up, if you're really in love, if you've got the real thing, it's going to last forever. And that's what I anticipated. Well, we studied it now. Average lifespan of that euphoric state is 2 years.
Yeah, nice.
Some a little longer, some a little less, average 2 years. My wife and I had dated 2 years before we got married. I came down rather soon after the honeymoon.
Right.
And then we found out we didn't agree on some things. And when we were in love, we never had any problems. Whatever she wanted to do was fine with me. We came down off that high, and then we had these conflicts. And so I knew I was right. She knew she was right. So we ended up arguing with each other. I remember one night it was pouring down rain outside, and we got into an argument. And in the middle of the argument, my wife walked out the front door in the rain. Mm-hmm. And I thought, man, this is bad. When a woman walks in the rain, it's bad.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, that's...
And so then not only did we have all those arguments, but then not only did I lose the positive feelings, now I had some negative feelings toward her, just because she wouldn't listen to me and da-da-da-da-da. And so the emotions became negative instead of positive. So it was a hard time for me. And what compounded it for me, Jim, is 2 weeks after we got married, I enrolled in seminary to study to be a pastor. And here I am studying to be a pastor and just miserable in my marriage,
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about that because you kind of came to that conclusion, but I wanted to know the timeline. You and Carolyn were in this season of disagreement and fighting, and you kind of are coming to your wit's end about, did I marry the wrong person? She may have been thinking the same thing. But then you had this turn where you were prompted, you said in the book, to start studying the teachings of Jesus for your marriage. Now, I don't think I've ever had that kind of specific thing. look at the words of Jesus for your marriage. So how did that happen for you, Gary? And how was it so profound?
Well, I was pretty desperate and just struggling with this whole thing. And I said to God, there's no way I can ever stand in front of people and preach if I'm this miserable in my marriage. I mean, I just couldn't conceive of doing that. And I said to God, I don't know what else to do. I've done everything I know to do. It's not working. She won't listen to me. I'm still blaming her. And I just said to God, I'm asking you to help me. I don't know what to do. As soon as I said that, there came to my mind a visual image of Jesus on his knees washing the feet of his disciples.
Huh.
And I heard God say to me, that's the problem in your marriage. You do not have the attitude of Christ toward your wife. It hit me like a ton of bricks because I remember what Jesus said. After he did that, which was a servant's job in his day, he washed their feet, and then he stood up and said, you call me teacher and Lord, and you are right. But in my kingdom, the leader serves. Now I'm telling you, you go do what I've just done for you. You go serve other people. And 3 questions made it practical once my heart was changed. When I was willing to ask these 3 questions, my marriage began to change. Simple questions. Number 1, honey, what could I do to help you? Question number 2, how could I make your life easier? Question number 3, how could I be a better husband? When I was willing to ask those questions, she was willing to give me answers.
Yeah.
And I started responding. Now, I knew nothing about love language in those days. Looking back on it, her request was telling me her love language, acts of service, And I started doing these things. And it didn't turn around overnight, but probably within 3 months, my wife started asking me those 3 questions. What can I do to help you? How can I make your life easier? How can I be a better wife? So we've been walking this road a long time in which I've been reaching out to serve her and she's been reaching out to serve me. And I really believe that this is God's intention. Yeah. God never ordained marriage to make people miserable. He made us to serve each other. And if we have the attitude of Christ, who said of himself, the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and later give his life a ransom for others. So if we get that right and we have that attitude serving each other, we'll tell each other what they can do, and we're doing what God intended, marriage to be a loving, supportive, caring relationship in which 2 are better than 1. And that's what God said in the beginning. Not good for Adam to be alone. I'm going to give him a helper. And when you get helping each other, you're on the good road.
No, it's so good and so true. I have a warning, though. You and I have talked about that before, those 3 questions. So I go home and I'm telling Jean, I'm saying, let me ask you 3 questions. And I said them, and she goes, oh, who'd you record with today? And then she quickly had 3 answers for each question. I mean, it was like right top of mind. I'm going, she's going to have to really search to answer.
She already knew.
She had 3 answers for each question ready to go. I said, man, how long has that been loaded, that response, So just a fair warning to those husbands. But Gary, in all seriousness, and I think this is true, but it didn't just resolve overnight. It was the beginning of that journey. And I think even with maybe impatience and anger, those were things that you continued to work on. And that helps the rest of us because it's not like it was immediate. It changed your perspective. But speak to that idea of growing in those attitudes, even though you would fail from time to time. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think always. I never speak in terms of a perfect marriage. I talk about a growing marriage.
Yeah.
Because we're either growing or we are regressing. All of us. We're getting better in our relationship or we're getting worse. And so, the whole thing of learning how to listen to her when we disagreed, rather than trying to convince her that I was right and she was wrong. Learning to say, honey, I want to understand what your perspective. Now share it with me, and let me try to get my arms around what you're saying and try to look at the world through her eyes and began to see her perspective on it so that I could then say to her, well, honey, I can see how that makes sense. I can see that. And learning to listen to her and look for solutions then, we still disagree, but the question now is how can we solve this? And rather than trying to win the argument, learning how to solve the problem. And that was huge. And it took time. It took time for that process. But it's something everybody has to learn if they're going to have a growing marriage, is how to process our conflicts in a positive way.
In the book, in fact, you say marital patience is giving your spouse the freedom to be human. I love that. I think, impatience is born out of an expectation that you're going to do something either perfectly or close to perfect, whatever it might be. And so that kind of creates that point of friction. But speak to that idea that marital patience is giving your spouse the freedom to be human.
Yeah, it's giving them the freedom to think differently than you, to feel differently from you. They have a different background. They have a different personality. It's allowing them to be human and thus expect that we're going to have disagreements. So sometimes in my marriage conferences, I have the husbands, I say, how about this, guys? Just turn to her and say, honey, I think from now on, I'm going to treat you like a human.
Yeah.
Which means I'm going to let you have thoughts that I wouldn't have and let you have emotions I wouldn't have. I'm going to treat you like a human. And so recognizing that there's going to be differences always, and we just have to recognize that's a part of our humanity. And God designed it that way. He wants really to use the differences for our good rather than ill, but we have to be open to that.
Hey, allow me to interrupt for just a moment here to say how much we appreciate you watching. Now, if you find value in this content, subscribe by clicking below. It'll be a big help to us. Let's go ahead and return to the show. Well, so Gary, you're talking about something I think a lot of us struggle with, which is those differences that never seem like they'll ever change. Like, that's just in my spouse's personality. So you've given us some good ways to think about that and to approach it with prayer, but practically, what do I do when, once again, either she's not going to change, or if I look in the mirror, I'm not going to change? What do I do then?
I think there are some things we have to recognize that we will have to accept and that they will never change. For example, I've sometimes said this, there are some people who are not wired to keep up with their car keys. And every time they get ready to walk out the door, they say, where are my keys?
Yes.
Where did I put my keys? Where did I put my keys? And I say, listen, you can put hooks out there in the garage and tell them, honey, just hang them on the hooks. They're not going to do that. I don't know if they cannot or they will not. I don't know if it's genetic or if it's just a pattern. But some things we have to accept. And one of the things I had to accept was that about my wife. And so I just say, guys, listen, if your wife is that way, the best thing you do is get you 2 or 3 sets of car keys. And you say, honey, use these. We'll find the others. And you will. You'll find them later, maybe in the refrigerator, but you'll find them, So.
Well, I want to defend all the wives because I think they would say, there's this basket in the room or in the closet.
The junk thing, yeah.
No, to put your dirty clothes in. And for some reason, you lay them all over the room. Is there some problem with putting them in the dirty clothes hamper? Has anybody had that experience? I have piles. I got the once worn pile because that way I could wear those pants or that shirt again, right?
Oh, well, I guess so.
But once you have a few piles, your wife usually is going, "Can you give me the code to all this?"
So has Gene accepted this about you?
I think, Gene's solution was, why don't you just do your own laundry? So I do. I do my own laundry. It's a good solution, actually, because I know what I need when I need it for a trip or something like that. But some of this is lighthearted, but it can be really big friction. I think my question, to piggyback on what John was talking about, we've done some programs where we talk about being in the marital rut. So it is, I'll use the word, it's kind of stupidity that we keep doing the same things and expect different outcomes. Much like your experience when the Lord laid that vision on you of, serving your spouse, serving your wife. So why don't we, or why are we slow to lean into doing something differently. And for Christians, informed by Scripture, trying the things that Jesus suggested we do, especially in our marriage, to serve one another. Why are we so slow as human beings to do those things?
I think we're creatures of habit. And we have, before we got married, we had a lot of habits about various and sundry things. So I think that because we are creatures of habit, we tend to just stay in the rut that we grew up with. I grew up, for example, washing dishes. My mother taught me how to wash dishes. And when the dishwashers came along, because we didn't have one in the early days of my life, dishwashers came along. I learned how to load a dishwasher so everything gets clean and nothing gets broken, and my wife loads a dishwasher like she was playing Frisbee, just throwing it all in there. And I tried to negotiate with her, honey, these 2 spoons with peanut butter between them, they're not going to get clean, honey. And these glasses, the way you've got them in there, the glasses are going to break. I tried, and you should try to negotiate, but there's some things that they will not change or cannot. Again, maybe what she said to me was, honey, I don't have time to load the dishwasher while I'm cooking.
Ooh, okay.
Ooh. Okay, so I've got a little insight there on that, And then one day she finally said, honey, if it's so important to you, why don't you just load the dishwasher? Just what your wife said to you about the clothes, okay?
It's a good tactic.
I said, well, honey, I could now. But, honey, some nights right after dinner, I have to go back to the church for a meeting. And so on those nights, I couldn't load it. And she said, well, I don't mind loading it. And I'm thinking, I know you don't, but I've got to unload it in the morning because I was the morning person already, But here's something I learned, Jim. What is the difference between couples who thrive in the second half and those who just survive? And one thing we found out is they have come not only to accept those things where they differed, but they've come to laugh about them.
That's good.
So now if my wife does load the dishwasher, and I open it in the morning, I look in there and laugh. The spoon, the knife lying this way instead of like this,
Oh, yeah.
and the glass laying on its side, and I look in there now and just laugh,
Oh, of course. I mean, that's part of it. One of the things that people respond to us, and we welcome everyone's response. It's great to have dialogue from those listening or watching on YouTube. But when we talk about arguing in a marriage, some people will respond and say, if you're a Christian couple, you really shouldn't argue. So I started to call it deep discussions or deep disappointments or whatever, just to not trigger people. Yeah. But speak to that idea of couples that we've never argued. We've never had a fight, Gary. I'm sure they exist. I don't know if that's supernatural or if it's just one person rolls over a lot and says, yeah whatever, I don't care. Describe that. You've probably counseled couples that have said that to you. We never fight. But that's not necessarily a mark of healthiness.
Maybe outside the office, people that don't go for counseling, they might say that. And it may be true, as you said. I don't know. It may be true. But I don't think it's necessarily healthy. I think the reality is we are going to have differences. Mm-hmm. Now, so some way we're handling those things, and maybe it's what you said. Maybe one of them is just kind of easygoing, and well, honey, if that's the way you want to do it, just go ahead. It's okay. And maybe that's why they don't have fights, because one of them just lets the other person do what they want to do. But to me, that's not a healthy relationship. If you have feelings over here and ideas over here, far better to share those with each other. You share your perspective, she shares her perspective. We're on a team. And it's not that one person always gets to do what they want to do. We share each other's ideas, try to listen to each other, see their perspective, because sometimes after we really see their perspective, we can honestly say, well, honey, I think it's best. I think what you have in mind is the best way to go on that. I really do. So that's fine. Let's do that. But it wouldn't always turn out that way. Sometimes we're going to meet in the middle, and say, well, how about this? It kind of helps both of us, and both of us feel good at doing it that way.
I think a light test of this is for the couple to say, what do you want to have for dinner tonight? And the spouse says, I don't care. And then you say, okay, how about Chinese? I don't want Chinese. Now you're on the road to conflict. This is good. Maybe you end up at a burger place or something. But I mean, that's the kind of thing we're talking about. You know, Gary, I want to make sure we capture the art of the apology as you've talked about it too, because you're tipping in that direction now. You know, so often when you apologize, and I'm sure everyone listening has had this experience where you say, yeah, I'm sorry. And people walk away going, he wasn't really sorry. Or they feel like, nah, that wasn't a genuine apology. So how, when you really mean it, how do you apologize in a way that is convincing?
I think what we have to recognize is that not only do people have a love language, they have an apology language. I wrote a whole book on that, but I recap it in this book that we're talking about today, A Simple Guide to a Better Marriage, is to realize that what you have, the idea you have as to what a sincere apology is like is probably different from your spouse. We typically learn from our parents how to apologize. If our parents taught us, you know, he pushes his little sister and the parent says, honey, you don't push sister, go tell her you're sorry. So he says, I'm sorry, even if he's not. He's 23 now. In his mind, if he does something to offend his wife, he's going to say, I'm sorry. That's all he was ever taught. The fact is, we asked thousands of people 2 questions. When you apologize, what do you typically say or do? When someone's apologizing to you, what do you want to hear them say and do? And their answers fell into 5 categories. And so these are 5 ways to apologize. And if you don't apologize in the way that's meaningful to them, they don't see it as sincere. And that's what we're trying to judge, whether they're sincere. So one of them, just quickly, one of them is I'm sorry. It's expressing regret, but tell them what you're sorry for, not just the words I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I lost my temper and yelled at you, or I'm sorry, whatever. Tell them what you're sorry for. And the second one is accepting responsibility. I was wrong, should not have done that. I take full responsibility. The third one is offering to make restitution. How can I make this right? What can I do to make this right? For some people, if you don't ask that, you're not sincere. If you were sincere, you'd want to make it right. And then the fourth one is expressing the desire to change your behavior. It's the biblical word repentance. Turn away from that behavior. I had a lady tell me just recently, she said, every time he apologizes, he says, honey, I'm sorry I hurt you. I didn't mean to hurt you. And he does the same thing the next week. And he comes back and says the same thing. She said, if he were sorry, he would try to change his behavior. So she's begging for him to express the desire. I don't want to keep doing this. And then the last one is actually requesting forgiveness. Will you forgive me? Or I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me. I have to be honest, that one was not on my radar. I thought you would know if I'm apologizing in any manner, I'd want to be forgiven. But some people, they're waiting for you to ask for forgiveness. So if you want to be sincere, you can learn all 5 of these. You're bound to hit it. But you and your spouse can sit down and talk. Honey, what do you consider to be a sincere apology? And I can guarantee you, most couples have never even talked about that topic.
No, that's
what
really
do you
good.
consider to be a sincere apology? And you may be shocked at what you hear, but it will give you valuable information on how to apologize in a meaningful way.
Allow me to interrupt for a moment to say how much I appreciate you watching. If you find value in this content, please subscribe by clicking below. It'll be a big help. Now, let's get back to the show. I think we have a very contract-based culture. We just learn to do that. Keep your receipts and take something back. And, you did then, if you do this, then I will behave this way. And then we take that right into marriage, kind of that contract orientation, rather than what God is expecting in that covenant relationship. Most of us as Christians may not even know the distinction. Talk about contract versus covenant.
Yeah, I think our culture is a contract culture. And there's nothing wrong with contracts. You can drive this car if you pay the monthly bill.
Right.
Nothing wrong with contracts. We make them in our culture all the time. But I think when we take marriage with that attitude, and many people do, I'm in this for you to make me happy. You make me happy, I'm here. Many of the divorces that take place in our country is because a person gets to the place where they feel like, you're not meeting my needs, you're not making me happy, you're not loving me, then I'm out of here. It's a contract. I'm here for you to make me happy. I'm here for you to meet my needs. If you don't meet my needs, then I'm gone. The Bible is not a contract mentality. It is a covenant relationship. First of all, a covenant is always made for the benefit of the other person. God made a covenant with Noah and saved his whole family. God made a covenant with Abraham, he promised. So it's a decision we make for the benefit of the other person. Now, I admit, most people do not enter marriage when they're standing there at the altar of, I'm in this thing to make you happy and meet your needs and give myself to serve you the rest of my life. Even though we use that language in sickness and in health, that's the language of covenant. So long as we both shall live, that's the language of covenant. So the covenant's made for the benefit of the other person, and it's lived out. I'm in this relationship to enrich your life. Whatever I can do to help you become the person that God wants you to become, that's what I want to do. And if we both have that idea of the covenant relationship, and the covenants are made for a lifetime, they're not made, I'm with you and I'm into this. You see, the whole framework today in American culture, where many people are living together before they get married, the concept is, I'm going to try this out.
Right.
And most of them don't get married because in trying it out, they have the normal things they would have if they were married. But now they just bail out because I'm not going to stay here and be unhappy in this relationship. So they bail out and go from one person to another person. They're never going to find ultimate fulfillment in a marriage. The divorce rate in second marriages is higher than first marriages. Obviously, the answer is not running and finding somebody else. The answer is learning. And so when we have the covenant concept that we are committed to each other for better or for worse, and if it gets worse, we're going to make it better. With God's help, we're going to turn it in a positive direction. And that's why reading books like this, going to marriage conferences, getting counseling, all those things are there available to help us turn it in the right direction and live out our covenant relationship.
And Gary, you have counseled probably tens of thousands of couples during your career. And in that respect, I think it's baffling to a degree. I get it. But especially couples that it's just a wearing down over time. That, I've just fallen out of love. I just don't feel like we have that magic anymore. However you want to describe it. I'm tired of picking up your messes or whatever. Kind of that slow erosion, not the big infidelity issue. Those exist as well. But I'm talking about that couple that it just grinds to a point where you're going, I don't think we have it anymore. I think it's right to talk to that marriage right now. Somebody listening, I'm sure there's going to be one or many couples that are in that spot. And to your point, I remember reading a University of Chicago study, and I'm not sure how they did this, but they took two cohorts, two groups, all of them having marital difficulty, but they convinced one group of 300 or so to go for counseling, continue to fight for their marriage, and that was part of the agreement in the research. So they did. And the other group, they encouraged to go through with the divorce. I mean, think of that. So, just give up. And so they watched these 300 couples on this side and 300 couples on that side. 5 years later, they followed up with them. 85% of the couples that stuck with it were glad they did, were happier than they were 5 years ago, but were so positive about the fact that they stayed together. Ironically, the same number, 85% that divorced, felt they had made a mistake not fighting for their marriage. So that really gets down to about 15% on that side that probably were going to get divorced no matter what. But isn't that interesting that 85% of those that divorced said they should have fought for their first marriage, and they brought the same garbage into their second marriage and third and fourth, and it just isn't the answer to find somebody new.
No, you're exactly right. I've had many people in my office who had been divorced and remarried and were having struggles in their second marriage. But I've had them not normally in the presence of the other person, but often when it was just the two of us say, if I had read your book on the love languages, I probably would still be married to my first spouse.
Right.
They're looking back and realizing what they're learning some things now that they wish they had learned earlier in the relationship. And what I try to emphasize is this. I'm empathetic with people who are in marriages that are struggling. I mean, I'm certainly empathetic because I've been there. But here's the thing. We typically start in the wrong place. If you want to have a better marriage, where do we start? Most of us by nature start by trying to get our spouse to change some things.
That would be so easy.
I know. If they would just change this, if they would just change this, if they would just change this.
Yeah.
Jesus had a different idea. He said, first, get the plank out of your own eye, and then you can see more clearly to help your spouse get the speck out of their eye. Yes, it would be nice if your spouse would change some things, but the place to start is not trying to get them to change. The place to start, I think as a Christian, you would say to God, Lord, you know what I'm married to, and you know where we are in this marriage, and you know I don't have positive feelings for them. And if they would just change some things, I would think things would be better. But right now, I want to ask you, where am I failing in this marriage? It's a prayer God will answer. It's a biblical prayer. David prayed that prayer. And so if we start where God told us to start and ask God to show us where we're failing, and they can be little things or big things, write them down, and then confess them to God and accept his forgiveness because Christ has paid for those things. Then go to your spouse and say, I've been thinking about us. In fact, the other night, I actually asked God to show me where I have been failing you. I know I've been on your case a lot, but I asked God to show me where I've been failing. And he gave me a pretty good list. And if you're open to it, I would like to share these with you and ask if you could forgive me for these things. Well, when I've shared that idea with couples, first of all, they're asking, well, if I do that, you think they'll come back in 3 weeks and confess their sins?
Yeah.
And I say, I don't know. I don't even know that they will forgive you, but I'll tell you this. They'll walk away thinking, wow, I can't believe this. For 3 years, they've been telling me how bad I am. They actually came and asked me to forgive them for stuff. God can use your behavior to touch their hearts. I can't guarantee you that they will all turn around, but I'm telling you, that's where Jesus said to start. I had one lady say to me, she said, Doc Chapman, I hear what you're saying. She said, but what if your husband really is the problem?
I guess that's a fair question.
And I said to her, well, okay, let's assume he's 95% of the problem. That would only leave 5% for you. I said, you wouldn't say you're perfect. No. She said, no one's perfect. I said, okay, you're just 5%. Ask God to show you you're 5%. You can't make him apologize, but no one can keep you from apologizing. You deal with God, then go confess to him, and God can use it. So it's the first step. It's not everything, but it's the first step.
Yeah, I would imagine you've observed this, but I think a person that asks the 3-week question, I mean, it's almost, again, like that if-then kind of comment, right? If I do apologize, then when will they apologize to me? It's probably a non-starter because you already know that's showing you their hand. It's tipping their hand to say, what I'm really after is for them to apologize to me, and I will feign the apology. I mean, they're not going to even know that that's their motivation, but you hear it as a counselor on the other side of the desk, don't you?
Absolutely.
And what do you say to that person when you call them out?
Yeah, I say this. We cannot manipulate another person. What we want to do is love them. And they say, well, I don't love them. I understand you don't have any love feelings. In the Bible, love doesn't start with a feeling. It starts with a way of thinking, an attitude. Now I said, God loves your spouse and you're married to them. You're in the best place of anyone on earth to communicate God's love to them. Romans chapter 5 and verse 5, the love of God is poured into our hearts by the Holy Spirit. So you just say to God, I don't have any love feelings for them, but I know you love them, so I'm opening my heart. You pour your love into me and I'll love them. And then if you know their love language, that whole concept, start expressing love in their love language. You've apologized to them. Now start loving them. And I'm telling you, if they don't turn around in 6 months, you can look God in the face. You can look yourself in the mirror and know you've done the most powerful thing you could do to try to stimulate growth in your marriage. Then you can apply tough love. Then you can say, honey, I don't know how you feel, but I feel like the next 6 months, I have really been loving you. And it appears to me you really don't care about me or our marriage. And so I've decided that I'm going to move in with my mother for a while. I'm not leaving you. I'm not divorcing you, but I'm just going to move out because I don't think I'm helping you by loving you and all the way I've done. But if you want to with me for counseling, I'm open for counseling. Or if they have a real severe problem, if you're willing to deal with that and you get counseling for that, then I'll go with you for counseling, So, but the problem, Jim, is people apply tough love before they ever do tender love. And so if you just go in one day and say, okay, I'm just sick and tired and da-da-da-da-da, and I'm out of here, they're thinking, good riddance. I'm tired of all you yelling at me and screaming at me anyway. But if you do an apology and then you try tender love for several months, you're doing the most. We can't make them change, but we can influence them. And that's the most powerful influence you can have.
That's so true.
Yeah. Great insights today from Dr. Gary Chapman on Focus on the Family with Jim Daly. And he's touching on some of the concepts in his book, A Simple Guide for a Better Marriage. Quick, practical insights every couple needs to thrive. Get your copy of the book from us at our website. The link is in the description below.
Gary, let me ask you, steadfast love, the term steadfast seems to repeat itself in Scripture as well. We could all conjure up what that might mean, especially if you played sports, that's the goal line stance. They're not going to score and I'm going to be steadfast. That's kind of an athletic application. But what does the Scripture mean by steadfast love?
I think it means that we love the other person regardless of what they do, the way God loves us, no matter what we do. Now, because he loves us, he lets us suffer the consequences when we do wrong. And because he loves us, he will discipline us because we're his children. His discipline comes out of his love. So if we have children, we discipline them because we love them. So steadfast love means that whether they're doing what we think they ought to be doing or whether they're doing something we think they shouldn't be doing, we still love them. I often apply this not only in marriage, but also like to adult children who are making decisions that break the heart of their parents. And I'm facing a lot of that in these days from parents who are just saying, Dr. Chapman, we just found out this or this or this about our adult child, and it's just breaking our hearts. And what are we going to do? What did we do wrong? And first of all, I say, don't assume that you did something wrong, because adults are free to make their decisions. God gives us freedom. We have to give the freedom to our adult children that God gives us. So if they're making wrong decisions, you can't make them do right, but you can say, I want you to know, though, even though my heart is broken with the lifestyle you're living, that I want you to know I love you. I will always love you, and I will always be here for you. And I hope we can have a relationship together because I love you in spite of the decisions you're making.
Gary, you describe counseling a woman in the book. I think she had been married 15 years. Now, this is going to connect with everybody. And I tested this with Jean this morning. A woman particularly who feels like, I've been married 15 years and I feel like totally disconnected from my husband. We don't talk about meaningful things. Anybody heard this before? And you make a recommendation there that I mentioned it to Jean early this morning, reading the book, reading the prep for the program, about applying your senses to this, like something you've seen, something you've heard, something you've tasted. Jean just lit up with that. She thought that was brilliant, by the way. And this idea that you apply your senses to these things. As a husband, I am caricaturing here a bit, and the shoe could be on the other foot. Sure. But, so that it's not news, weather, and sports, which is where guys typically like to hang out. But you apply that. Describe how you would apply that and how you help this woman and her husband, it sounds like, feel better connected to each other.
I think there are a lot of couples that just aren't talking much at all. They're just each living their own life, and they're cordial. It's just that there's no exchange. They don't know what the other person's thinking, feeling, or whatever. So again, having some kind of plan can be extremely helpful. One plan would be to say, why don't we each share with the other three things that happen in our lives today and how we feel about them? They can be positive things or negative things. They can be little things or big things. They can be, honey, one of the things I did is I stopped by on the way home and put gas in the car. And she said, well, how'd you feel about that? He said, to be honest, I felt angry. I looked at the price and I felt angry. So it's just sharing life. But we've got an organized way to do it. And then you mentioned that another one is thinking in terms of, honey, tell me something that you tasted today or yesterday or last week. What's the best thing you've tasted today? Who's ever asked that question?
Ice cream.
Or what did you see today that really encouraged you? Yeah, or what did you see today that really made you sad? Or what did you hear today that encouraged you? Somebody said something that encouraged you. Or what do you remember today that you said that might encourage somebody else? Just again, thinking of the five senses.
Yeah.
Or did anybody give you a pat on the back today? Anybody touch you with a high five today? Again, we don't think in terms of talking about those kind of things, but it's an easy way to talk with each other about things that you wouldn't normally do. So those two ideas can help couples who are just kind of in a pattern, of the same old thing every day.
Yeah.
And they're not really talking with each other about much of anything.
Yeah.
It's an easy way to break out of that habit.
I think men, again, particularly, I think those hooks help us because we're like teenage boys. You remember those years when you're going, how was school? Fine. What'd you do? Nothing. What are you going to do this afternoon? Nothing. It's one word answers. And I think we lean into that, and our wives, they want so much more that, tell me something. And so that's kind of like loading the carburetor with gas to say, well, let me tell you about something I ate today or I saw today, or it just helps us kind of frame it a little better to get engaged, to get the motor going. Is that a fair way to look at that? Yeah, I like that. Hey, speak to the importance of a healthy balance between our work and our marriage. I mean, that can be so tough for both husbands and wives now, because for the most part, we're two-income families for a lot of people. But how then in that busyness, how much more so you need to prioritize time like this and open communication and dialogue, because everything's pulling at you in every direction.
I think that's a challenge that almost all couples face in our culture today, is how do we balance work and family? And I don't think there's a magic wand to be waved. There's no one answer for every couple that works, because our work schedules are so different and all that sort of thing. But I do think we have to ask ourselves the question, what is the quality of our marriage, and what is the quality of my interacting with my children, as opposed to the time I spend at work?
Mm-hmm.
And some of us will likely make some huge changes if we understood what really is happening. Mm-hmm. I was at a funeral not long ago, and the father had died, and I had never met his son. He was a 25-year-old son. And after the funeral, I was just talking to him, and I said, how'd you and your father get along? And he said, I never knew my father. Mm. I said, what do you mean? He said he had a job that he left on Monday morning, and he came home on Friday night. And then all day Saturday, he played golf with his buddies. And then Sunday morning, he slept till noon, and then he watched football and so forth on Sunday afternoon. He said he never came to any of my games. He never talked to me about anything much at all. He said, I just never knew him. And tears came to my eyes when I walked away. And I thought, if that father had known how that son was going to feel through all those years, he may have made some pretty radical changes in order to spend more time with his son,
Well, Gary, that's a great call and a great way to end today. Your book, A Simple Guide for a Better Marriage, quick, practical insights every couple needs to thrive. I mean, that's right up our alley here at Focus on the Family. We're trying to do that, and we're so grateful how you pour into Focus on the Family and allow us to, spread the content that the Lord's given you through radio programs, podcasts. You're always willing and desirous for us to work with you in that way. And that's so good, because you have so many great things to say that the Lord has given you. So thank you once again for being with us and sharing the good news about healthy marriage and the benefits. Thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you. I always enjoy being with you, and thanks for all that you're doing at Focus on the Family.
Well, and if you're in that spot, you have an okay marriage, but it feels like a bit of a rut, or you know somebody that does, or you feel like people at church might want to take advantage, get a few copies. Just get in touch with us and let us know that you'd like the book. If you can make a gift of any amount, a monthly would be great. That's how Gene and I support the ministry. I know Dina and John do the same. That's a great way to go, but a one-time gift will be good as well. We believe in your marriage so much so that if you can't afford it, just get in touch with us and we'll give it to you, and we'll trust others will cover the cost of this. It's important for Christians to have strong marriages, and we're committed to that.
Yeah. You'll find all sorts of great help, including this book, A Simple Guide for a Better Marriage, on our website, and the link is in the description below, or give us a call, 800, the letter A, and the word family. And on behalf of the entire team, thanks for joining us today for Focus on the Family with Jim Daly. I'm John Fuller, inviting you back next time as we once again help you and your family thrive in Christ.